Okay, our lesson today is 1.08. We're looking at sequencing. So thank you for being here, participating in the class Connect. We're going to go through my slideshow, and then you'll have time to take that assignment. It's actually the checkpoint, but whatever. It's a quiz. It's fine. So why are we doing this? I want you to be able to order a sequence of events using sequence words like first, then, and next. So in the quiz, you're going to be given a sentence and you will have to type the sequence word. You will also be given a series of events and you will need to identify maybe which one comes first, which one comes last. So you will need to use those sequence words to clue you into the order of events. So why are we talking about sequencing? It's important to talk about sequencing because humans organize events using measurements of time. So we organize things based on time. If you remember a song, sometimes it brings you back to a particular moment in time. We like to keep track of people's ages and anniversaries. Humans like to organize history in time. We also call that chronological order. So organizing things as they happen. In a story, you see that as the beginning, the middle, and the end. So what we're going to do is look at sequencing, how it comes up in two different ways, in stories and in directions. So chronological order is the order of what happens in time. So first this happens, second this happens, third this happens. And the reader needs to know the order so they can follow the storyline of the events. Maybe you have tried to tell a story and then you forgot some details and you tried to go and fill it back in. And the person listening to this just goes, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Or maybe you have been that person and you're trying to follow the train of thought of somebody else who's not telling you a story in order of how it happened. It gets a little confusing. So we want to use these sequence words so that we can keep track of what happens in a story. So a story is also called a narrative, and the author tells a story as it happens. The readers learn the setting, they're introduced to the characters, and then they follow those characters' actions and problems to the conclusion. One example is the story of Goldilocks. She finds the home of 3 bears, and she eats their porridge, she sits in their chairs, sleeps in their beds, and ultimately gets caught. Don't be like Goldilocks. Have some respect for people's personal boundaries. But this is an example of how a story is organized as those events happen. Other reasons or types of writing that uses sequencing is explanatory writing or directions. So that's when the author tells the reader how to do something in order. So step-by-step explanations or directions. Examples of those types of writing are recipes, how to add ingredients together, because depending on the recipe, sometimes you need to add your wet ingredients together and then your dry ingredients in a separate bowl, and then you mix them together. Otherwise, your texture is all off. If you're tying your shoe, there is a sequence of events that you need to do. Changing the oil in your car, building a fence, planting a garden. All of these different tasks have an order that you need to follow. So we're going to be looking at types of writing that revolve around storytelling and explanatory writing that uses these sequence words. You're like, cool, what are these sequence words? So sequence words are like clues that an author gives you, and it typically is found in the beginning of a sentence. It shows you that there is a transition of time that has happened. So some examples are first, second, third, in the beginning, then finally, to start, next, last, to begin, afterwards, meanwhile, to conclude. So all of these are different ways to pace, but the first one in each of these lists would come at the beginning. The second one would come in the middle, and the third one would come at the end, or the fourth one in that case. So let's look at an example in a paragraph. So I wrote a paragraph about how to start a fire. And what I've done is I've highlighted these sequence words. And in this case, you can see that they all come in the beginning of the paragraph. So to start a fire, you will need a few ingredients and some patience. First, gather your materials: tinder, small sticks, large sticks, and logs if available. Make sure they are all dry. Next, place the tinder in a pile and set the small sticks in a teepee shape on top of the tinder. Use a match or a lighter to light the tinder. After your fire has started, add on the larger sticks in a similar teepee fashion. Once the fire has truly caught, you should add the logs to create a lasting fire. So this is an example of a paragraph that gives you directions step by step and uses those sequence words. One of the sequence words that I have not discussed yet, but that I want to take a second to, there's also words that talk about frequency. So this is like a word like often, or rarely, sometimes. These can also show some examples of sequence words. Okay. Let's look at one more paragraph and then we will recap and you're going to take your checkpoint. So this is a paragraph about making French toast. And you know it's a paragraph about making French toast because French toast comes up in the topic sentence in the very first sentence of the paragraph. And in our previous paragraph, the very first sentence, our topic sentence, tells you this is what you're going to need to start a fire. Okay, so French toast is a delicious breakfast treat. To begin, gather your ingredients: eggs, bread, milk, and spices. While you create the egg mixture, warm a frying pan. Combine eggs, milk, and spices into a wide bowl with a whisk. Once the egg mixture is well blended, you will dip each side of the bread into the egg mixture. After the bread has been dipped, place it on a warm frying pan to cook. Finally, remove the slices from the frying pan and enjoy your breakfast. Now, there could be more details in there. I know people have their secret special recipes, but that's the gist, okay? What I wanted to point you to is, again, these sequence words. If we could even add one of those sequence words that talks about frequency. Often you may need to flip the bread twice. Sometimes it doesn't get cooked all the way. So I'm going to add one more sentence in here that brings up those sequence word of how often something happens, how frequently something happens. Okay. So that was your lesson. What I want you to do now is take the 1.8 checkpoint. Let me know when you're done. Type it in the chat. But remember, if you are not scoring at least a 14, review the slides in K-12 and retake it. When I say you should be getting a 14, that's because that's a C. I want you to get at least a C or better, okay? So, try your hand at 1.08. Let me know how you did.